Hey guys, I'm Richard Holder and welcome to the channel. You know, I've done hundreds of videos on what happens when you swap in an LS camshaft. But it dawned on me today, I've never done an actual video on how to swap an LS camshaft. So here you go, step by step with tips how to swap an LS cam. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do a camshaft on an LS application. This is our LS application. It is an all aluminum L33 5.3 liter, and as you can see, it's already probably different than the one you have in your vehicle. First of all, it's not in a vehicle. It's actually on the dyno, easier access to everything. But what we have to do is get everything out of the way so we can get access to the camshaft to actually do the swap. And those things include the water pump. Now we've got an electric water pump on here, and the damper, the front cover. We're also going to have to remove the coil packs. I like taking the plugs out. We're also going to have to remove the valve covers to get access to the rockers. So I'm going to show you how to do the major components. Let's jump right in and start our swap. Now you can obviously start wherever you want. First thing I did was drain the water. You're going to have to do that because water is going to leak out when you remove the water pump. I like to start on the side. What I'm going to do is remove the coil packs and the valve covers to get access to the rockers. Then I turn my attention to the front. So let's jump on that. So we're going to pull the plug wires. You're going to unhook your coil packs. It's a simple plug. There's going to be bolts holding these on. We only have 2 on there because it's the dyno. You'll probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got that out of the way. Now we can get the valve cover. Those are 5. The coil packs are 10 millimeter. These are 5/16 or 8 millimeter. Come on, baby. Now, come on. Now we've got access to the rockers. Before I unbolt the rockers, what I like to do is take all of the spark plugs out. That allows me to rotate the motor much easier. I'm going to have to do that when I want to position the thing at TDC. So I'm also going to want to rotate it to get the rocker in the right position so it doesn't have spring load on it when I'm trying to unbolt the rockers. So I'm going to want to undo both sides. And then once I've loosened them, I can go ahead and buzz them off. Good time to check them. Make sure the gap is good. See if there's anything on them. Are there any problems? Are they oil soaked? Do you have any fuel on them? All these are looking good. So now we can get to the rockers. Now what we're going to do is loosen all the rockers that don't have spring tension in them. I'll go ahead and zoom in here. You'll be able to take a look and see what I'm doing. So now we can loosen these. As it turns out, only one of them has spring pressure on it, but not very much. So I'm going to go ahead and unbolt that one. So now all those are loose. Now I can put this on my gun. I can buzz them all off. And then I like to lift the whole thing out as one assembly. That's way easy to go back on. Next, I like to pull out all the push rods, and since I'm doing a cam swap, these are actually CompCam's hardened push rods. Go ahead and just set them up here. Get them out of the way so they're not pushing down on the lifter when I rotate the cam and get it in the right position. Now we're going to move the other side. Starting with the coil pack. Because the dipstick is going to be in the way, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. It's pretty simple, 15 millimeter. Now we got the valve cover bolts. Now it's time for the rockers. You can see we've got two of them, 1, 2, that have spring pressure on them. We'll unbolt all the rest of them and then rotate the motor until these don't have spring pressure on them, and then we can remove those two. We'll go ahead and rotate the motor and get the spring pressure off of the remaining two. So put our 24mm on there. I'll go ahead and spin this around. I'm gonna have you guys watch the rocker as we take the spring load off those two rockers. So you're gonna wanna keep an eye on this one and this one. Those will be the two that move. And we're rotating. There goes one popped up. I think we're good. So now we can loosen these two up. Take off the whole assembly just like the other side. 1 and 2. And off they come. So now that we've removed the rockers on both sides, what I'm going to do is remove the water pump and the damper, starting with the water pump. I like to remove the water pump first and keep the damper in place. That way any water that drips down is not going to drip down into the cover and into the motor. So let's remove the water pump, then get to the damper. So I'm plugging the electric water pump. I've already drained the water out of our tower. You can also drain the block. There are block drains, a big one on this side and a smaller one on this side. The thing is, draining the block's a good idea. There's always going to be some water that comes out of this water pump, even if you drain the block completely. When you pull the water pump off, there's going to be some there. Because you know how it is. Water always wants to get on you. So, might as well do both of them so we have access to the bolts. So that would be the equivalent of your radiator. So the fun thing is have it all drained down in this buckets and then knock the buckets over. So we get our water pump off, out of the way. So I don't always drain the water out of the block completely. What I do is just drain down low enough where it's not dribbling out here out of the opening. So I just stick a piece of hose in there, not very far. Little siphon. Boom. Look. Whoa. You only have to get it low enough so it doesn't drain out. Boom. Now it's time for the damper. If it's the first time this is coming off from the factory, those are really, really, really tight. Yeah, that's 3 reallys. So you gotta have a good gun to get them off. Luckily this one has already been off once for a cam swap, so it should come out pretty easy. Yeah, boom. So next we'll set up our little balancer puller tool here. 3 jaws on there. The longest push rod, stick that in there. She's ready to go. So we've got our puller in place, and these hooks grab over the back side. There's little indents here on the back side of the damper, 3 of them. So you put this in, get those in place, make sure that they're all there, positioned properly. Then you tighten this up, and the push rod pushes in and stops on the inside of the crank. That's nice and tight. Then what happens when you spin this in, it's going to pull the damper off. Fingers crossed. Oh, I heard it. It broke free. And it's off. Now it's time for the front cover. Remember, there are 2 bolts underneath the front cover going through the pan. Don't forget those, because if you try to pull it off, it's going to snap. I like to do those first. I'm going to loosen these, and I hit it with the gun. Those I'm done. Yeah, it's a junkyard motor. So what I like to do now is, I've got a washer, this is actually a pilot bushing on the factory crank bolt. Put that in there so that I can rotate the motor. We don't have plugs in it, so it rotates pretty nicely. And I forgot to take these push rods out over here. I'm gonna take those out. Spin this baby around. So what I'm trying to do, there's a mark here. See if I can zoom in and see that. This mark right here, we're going to rotate that around. I want to spin the thing all the way around just to get the lifters all up. And we're going to line that up with another mark that's on the crank sprocket. So spin this thing around. I'm going to go a couple times here. They should all be up now. So what we're looking for now is our mark right here to come around at the bottom. I'll show you. It's going to line up with another crank sprocket. There we go. So just to show you, here is our marker on the cam sprocket. Here's a corresponding, see the little hole down there on the crank sprocket. Those 2 are lined up. Now we can remove these 3 cam retaining bolts. So we've moved it a little bit. What I'm going to do is snug those. Sometimes it happens. Just put it back into position. Okay, line straight down there. This one lined up with our crank. Now we can remove these. And that'll allow us to pull the cam gear off. There we go. Get the chain off of it. And I just set it to the side over like this. So pull that aside. Next up we have the 4 cam retaining bolts. Cam retaining plate bolts, I should say. And on the cam retaining plate, it's pretty easy to see. That side goes toward the motor. It has the seal on it. Goes on like that. So the camshaft we're installing is a Brian Tooley Racing Truck Norris cam. I like to get the cam prepped before I pull the old cam out and stick the new one in. That way it's ready to go. And the reason for that is when we rotate the camshaft, we're pushing the lifters up and they get stuck up in the lifter trays. Hopefully, on a high mileage motor, sometimes they'll drop back down while we're doing the cam swap. That means you got to tear the motor apart. Or you can slide dowels in here, they make dowels, to hold the lifters up. I'm going to chance it on this one because we've run a bunch of tests on it. Let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. So your stock cam will not look this nice because this was a new cam when it went in. And we're putting another new cam in. But it works the same. So we'll take that cam out. I'll put our Brian Tooley Truck Norris cam in. Ta-da! And we managed to do it without any lifters falling. So now, the reverse of the removal is the installation, starting with our cam retaining plate and our 4 bolts. There are also versions of these that have torques on them and they're countersunk. Those are a little bit problematic, so be careful with those. So now I'm not going to torque these because this thing is going to be coming back out anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and put the factory torque specs up so you know what those are when you guys are doing your swap. Click, click. So what I like to do to get the cam and the sprocket in the right position, remember we want this aimed down toward the one on the crankshaft. I put it on the cam, line it up on the dowel. Here. Okay, so that I make sure that that is lined up where I want it to be before I put the chain on, and it is. It's in the right spot. Then take the chain up, put the sprocket in the right position here. Okay. That should be really close. And when you do that, it goes right on. Now we've got our 3 retaining bolts. Now we've got our 3 retaining bolts. Now it's time for the front cover, and there is one trick on the front cover also. So I like to put that in position. So I like to run these in a little bit, not all the way, and I don't want them to be touching the pan because the damper on the seal is actually going to locate this front cover. So I'm going to push the damper into place so it doesn't fall off. And then I have this tool that I've made. There are ones available from the auto parts store you can get. Basically what we're doing is just threading that on, tightening it up, and to push the damper into place. Until I can get the bolt a little bit of oil on this backside here where it seals against the front seal on the cover. Good idea. This one has plenty because it's an old used motor. So we're tight enough now. Take our tool out. I put a little bit of oil on the bolt. Put the bolt in. Turn down my gun. Drive it in. Okay. Now we can tighten the front cover bolts. Then I like to go back over with a wrench. Okay guys, quiz for all you guys watching the video. What was here? What did I use this for? That's not factory. Okay, another trick when you're putting a new camshaft in, you might need to change the push rod length. The reason for that is because the base circle of the cam may have changed from the camshaft that you took out. Here's what I like to do to check what size push rod length I need. So the push rod is down, it means we're on the heel of the camshaft. So now I'm going to tighten this rocker until we get to zero lash. And zero lash basically is when the tip of the rocker is touching the valve and the back of the rocker, the cup, is touching the push rod. So there's no more lash, there's no more movement. Now what we need to do is put our ratchet on. Now what we need to do is count the number of turns until we tighten the rocker all the way against the stand. So let's see what we do. We got half, 1, 1.5, almost 2. So that tells us that that push rod is actually too long. We need a shorter push rod. So after you check your push rod length to make sure that's accurate, we install all the push rods. Followed by the rocker arms. I like to run them down with the gun a little bit. Once again, you're going to have a couple that may have spring pressure on them, so we're going to rotate the motor, get the spring pressure off those, and finish tightening. I like to go back and give each one of them a check, make sure I got all of them. Go down the line. See, that one's still loose. Now I like to leave the spark plugs out until the very last thing so I can rotate the motor on the other side. Tighten down the ones that we can that don't have spring tension. And we're all set. I guess it's time to make some noise. Okay guys, because no Richard Holder video would be complete without actual dyno results, here are the dyno results from the truck Norris cam from Brian Tooley Racing on the 5.3. Here's the cam we just swapped into the 5.3 liter L33. It's a Brian Tooley Racing truck Norris cam, and equipped with the truck Norris cam, the dual plane intake manifold with the Wilson carb spacer on it, the 750 Holley carburetor and long tube headers, and of course our MSD ignition controller. This combination with the Brian Tooley Racing truck Norris cam produced 423 horsepower and 402 foot-pounds of torque. And to put that into perspective, the last L33 that we ran, it was all stock, made about 365 or 370 horsepower. So these are pretty good gains from just a cam swap, but most importantly, I want to show you how to swap a cam. Now go out and pick the right one. Okay guys, what's the takeaway from this LS cam swap video? Well, how to swap a cam is every bit as important as which cam you choose to swap. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, and I'll keep swapping.